What's going on, everybody? So, Tyler Vincent, aka Homebuyer Tyler, here. We're going to be talking about mobile home parks today and how one man's trailer trash can be another man's treasure. Uh, this asset class for me has made a life changing difference. Just in a 12-month time span, I did three of these deals. I kept two of them and I ended up selling a third one. I wholesaled it. Um, we'll dive into the details a lot more on each of those three deals, but just high level. The first one, seller financed, it cash flows about $2,000 to $3,000 a month. It'll be paid off in 9 years, owned free and clear. I got into it with only $16,000 down, so not a lot of money out of pocket at all. Saved me $46,000 on my taxes. That was a really, really good one. The second one, kept that one as well. That one cash flows pretty well, but it's all the tenants own the homes. You know, the park owner, myself, I don't own the homes. So it's the easiest asset I have in my entire portfolio to manage. So that one's an awesome one. And that one we did gosh, what was it? I think it was a $368,000 value add on that in a 30-day time period with like no effort put out. I mean, all we did was just send out some letters. I'll explain that one later on. And then the third and final one, that's the one that I wholesaled. That was another phenomenal deal. Really, really good seller financing one. The reason I sold it is, it was the closing was like right at the same time that I was getting married. So I just knew I wasn't going to have the time or the energy to be able to pull that one off during that time of my life. But so we wholesaled that one. We made $100,000 assignment fee on that. So between those three deals, it was a really, really good year just on those three deals. All right. This is not like an official classification. This is just what I use. I break mobile home parks into three different buckets. You've got trailer parks, which is probably your stereotypical mobile home park that you think of when you hear that word. So this is like if you've seen the movie 8 Mile with Eminem, right? Like that's a trailer park. Kind of gross, typically like D-class properties, just tough to manage. Mobile home parks, that's kind of like your middle of the road. I don't know that I would necessarily want to live there, but they're not unsafe. They're not dangerous. Just kind of middle of the road, whatever. And then you've got the mobile home communities, which are significantly nicer, right? Like those are the ones that you see in California, the retirement communities, or in Florida. I think you know what I'm talking about there. And then we've got park-owned homes versus tenant-owned homes. So you can have mobile homes within your park that you own as the park owner. So it's like a regular rental property, right? Like you're responsible for maintenance, you're responsible for managing the tenant, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of work involved, right? Mobile homes typically require a lot more maintenance. Your tenant class is usually a little bit lower in mobile homes, so management is a little bit harder. But then you also have tenant-owned homes, and this is the ticket, in my opinion. This is where the tenants actually own the mobile homes, and they pay you a monthly fee, which is called lot rent, right? They pay you rent to use your lot, like basically just live on the land, like that's it. So they're responsible for the maintenance of their home. The only management that you do if you own the park and the tenants own the homes is like you make sure the grounds of the mobile home park are kept well. So you've got landscaping, you've got some sort of insurance policy on it, you're paying taxes. If you have lights in your park, which you probably do, you're paying for the lights in the park. And then just making sure that the tenants pay their monthly lot rent. That's about it. Really, that's about it. That's the strategy that I believe in when it comes to mobile home parks, is trying to get these things to tenant-owned homes. Let's talk about like why mobile home parks. Excuse me, sorry, I've been battling a sickness these past few days. Well, we've got a lower cost per unit, and we've got a disproportionately high upside. So, on the two parks that I bought, our cost basis in that was somewhere around 10 grand a unit, give or take. So you can enjoy similar cash flow benefits, but you're in it at a fractional cost basis compared to like apartment buildings, right? Apartment buildings, at least in my market, they're trading somewhere between 80 to 100 grand a unit a lot of times. So you compare that to 10 grand a unit with a mobile home park, it's a huge difference. So when you've got a lower cost basis, but a disproportionately high upside, that ultimately results in lower risk. And now I say no more repairs here. This is with tenant-owned homes, which is, again, that's the strategy we're going to be focusing on in this presentation, because that's what I believe in, is the tenant-owned homes. So we don't have repairs anymore, right? Like a lot of us, a lot of you watching this video, I know I have a ton of single families, right? Like I don't just do mobile home parks. I have an apartment building. I have a ton of single families. I'm very familiar with dealing with contractors, and it can be a headache. Sometimes they don't do a good job. Sometimes they don't show up. Sometimes they don't show up on time. Sometimes they do the job incorrectly, right? Like sometimes they steal from you. It's just it's a mess. It's a mess. It can be a mess. Um, Ease of management, right? Like if we're not running all these different rehabs, it's incredibly easy. I know at least in terms of the time that we spend on managing the tenant-owned home parks, it's got to be less than an hour a month. I mean, all we do is just make sure that the payments are collected. We set it up so that they're paying via online ACH. So we see which payments have come in, which ones have not. The ones that have not come in, we call the tenants, make sure that they're going to pay. And that's about it. And then we make sure that our guys go on and cut the grass. Make sure the bills are paid, which that's pretty much set up on auto pay, the utilities, the taxes, the insurance. It's easy stuff. Big expenses are incredibly rare. So if we're not responsible for the maintenance of the mobile homes, again, all we've got is the maintenance of the park. So the big expenses are usually the ones that you can see coming from way ahead of time, like from before you buy the park, right? Big expenses could be like if you're on a septic or if you're on a well or a lagoon or something like that and there's a problem with it. I mean, I know we get those inspected before we buy it. So like when we get it inspected, we know what's wrong with it. So if there is a big expense related to it, we've already put that in our underwriting. We've already factored it in, so it's not a surprise. Another big expense could be paving the roads, right? But typically we know if the roads need to be paved. Like we can get someone out there, give us an opinion on how long the roads have left, basically, and be able to budget for that. It's super easy. And on a related note is predictability. So since the big expenses are super rare, you have incredibly predictable financials. You know what you're collecting every single month. You typically know exactly what you're paying out every single month. And so the financials are honestly kind of boring, but that's really, really nice in rental real estate. Here's what's crazy is you've got just like unbelievably high tenant demand. You can't really even open a computer, turn on a TV, do anything anymore, news related anyway, that is, without hearing about the affordability crisis going on in the US, right? Rents are going out of control. Prices of homes are jumping out of control. So like people can't afford to buy homes. People can't afford to rent homes. Well, that opens up the door for mobile homes, right? A lot of times for middle and lower income families, mobile homes are kind of the only path to homeownership that these people have. And then you've also got a diminishing supply. So municipalities are looking for excuses to close down mobile home parks. And it's because they typically have a bad connotation. They typically bring in a lower tenant class. Again, I'm speaking stereotypically here. And then a lot of times, like the city could be collecting much higher tax revenue from something else. So taxes on a mobile home park are typically pretty low compared to, if they got rid of that and then built up commercial buildings or apartment buildings or something like that, their tax revenue would be much higher. So cities are trying to cut these things down. So what you've got, if you can think back to Econ 101, right? What happens when demand goes up? Well, what happens to price when demand goes up? Price goes up, right? Well, what happens when supply goes down? Price goes up. Well, what happens when both those happen, right? You've got demand going up, you've got supply going down, price is going through the roof, okay? And what's cool about these mobile home parks is that when you value them, you don't necessarily do it based on comparable sales. You can and they help, but really how multifamily in general is valuated is based on the income approach. And so if we've got a set of financials where our price is moving up, our rents are moving up, that's going to directly increase the bottom line, which is going to directly increase the value of the park. So a lot of people say these things don't appreciate. I would beg to differ, and that's because our lot rent is climbing through the roof. This is the part that's crazy about tenant-owned mobile home parks. So we all know, like, if you own a single family, that tenant turnover it's how you lose the game as a landlord, right? You've got vacancy, so you've got lost rent, right? The cost of repairs. I mean, you'd be lucky if a tenant moves out and all you have to do is paint, carpet, clean. Usually it's more than that. But even if it is just paint, carpet, and clean, I mean, you've got at least $5,000 there if you've got a tiny house, but usually it's a lot more than that every single time a tenant moves out. And that'll wipe away a year's worth of cash flow at least, sometimes more than that. Carrying cost. The mortgage company isn't going to cut you any slack because your unit is vacant, right? You've still got the mortgage payment or whatever it is. The average cost to move a trailer or a mobile home is roughly about $8,000. Let me ask you something. Do you think these tenants that own these mobile homes and these mobile home parks can typically afford $8,000 to move their mobile home out of the park? The answer is no, right? Like a lot of these people, like they don't have a spare $8,000 to move the mobile home. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of money. I included a little fact here, but you can just see that basically what this says is just like people that move into these mobile homes and they buy them, like they don't plan on leaving. Like they plan on staying there for a really long time. So what this results in is unfair leverage for you as the park owner. You've got really these tenants don't have a choice. Like let's talk about what happens when you raise the lot rent. Let's talk about their options. They can pay the increased lot rent. They can get it evicted and just lose their mobile home and get out of the park. Now you get a free mobile home. They get nothing, right? Like that sucks. They can sell their mobile home, which isn't always the easiest thing to do to find a buyer by the time you need to before the eviction. They can sell the mobile home to the park owner, which that's what my next bullet point here is. It's an unexpected profit center. But that's pretty much it, right? So when I say unfair leverage for a park owner, you can, and there's obviously a degree of ethics that comes into this thing, right? Like if you watch the video, you shouldn't be doing wrong by these people. I'm not just going to raise the lot rent up to $500 a month, down from $150 just because I know like they don't have any options. Like that's not a right thing to do, right? So we want to operate with a degree of ethics, but when it does come time to increase the lot rent, you certainly have the upper hand as the park owner. There's not much that these people can do. And so the unexpected profit center here, if you evict them or they decide to sell the mobile home back to you, like I said, their pool of buyers is usually pretty slim. They don't have a huge pool of buyers. So what happened in one of our parks is we ended up buying 3 mobile homes back from tenants throughout the course of the year. One guy was facing eviction, decided to sell it to us. Another lady, unfortunately, she passed away. And then the third one, he wanted to move to be closer to family, so he decided to sell it to us. We picked up each of those for $10,000. $10,000 each, so $30,000 in total. We sold all 3 of those for $40,000 each, $120,000. That's what is that? We picked it up for 30, sold it for 120. That's a 400% return. Not bad, right? And so what we did is we turned around and we seller financed those to a different owner occupant. And so now it increases the cash flow, which increases the income, which increases the value of the park. So that's been phenomenal for us. And I didn't even think that was going to be a profit center before buying the parks. Finally, this is where you can differentiate yourself. This is how you get the deals. Like what you need to ask yourself is like, all this sounds great, but I would imagine everyone else is going after these things. And you're right, a lot of people are. But a lot of people, I'd say the vast majority, are not willing to do the work. So what that results in is it's incredibly difficult to get a list of mobile home parks. And the reason for that is that municipalities classify them differently. Some of them classify them as a parking lot. Some of them classify them as vacant land. Some of them commercial. Some of them mobile home park. You get my point, okay? So it's hard to just pull one list and get a comprehensive list of mobile home parks. And then you've also got, when you're talking with these sellers, a lot of times they're mom and pop owners. The niche that I live in is between 10 pads and 60 pads. Usually when you get over 60 pads, that's when you run into the institutional buyers, like hedge funds or huge investors that I'm not going to compete with, right? And then below 10 pads, like it's not really worth going after, in my opinion. 10 to 60, we wind up with these mom and pop owners. What you'll find is that a lot of times they're mismanaged. They don't have financials. They don't know how to work a spreadsheet, right? Like I find that when I work with these sellers, like I actually have to build their financials for them. I have to build their rent rolls, all that kind of stuff. They typically have a sentimental or emotional attachment to the park. So that introduces like kind of like an interesting opportunity where if you're buying the park from them, you can actually kind of like just offer them to be an unofficial park manager. We've done that for 2 of our parks now, where we bought it, and before we bought it, we asked the seller like, hey, like, I don't even know if you'd have any interest in this, but if we bought it from you and then kept you as kind of like the unofficial park manager, if you wanted to be involved and talk with the tenants and stuff, you can do that. But I'm sure that's something you probably wouldn't even be interested in. And they like absolutely love it, right? You want to play that on a case by case basis, but in our case, like in our situations, we found that it was hugely beneficial. And I think that edged us out over some competitors that we were dealing with on a couple of these parks. Finally, with these mom and pop owners, usually breeds a great opportunity for negotiating seller financing, really good seller financing terms. So these people, they find it appealing to be able to have a income stream basically throughout their retirement because they're usually elderly. And so if I tell them like, hey, I can get you this price, and basically instead of giving it up front all to you on day one, I can cut it up over monthly payments. A lot of them really, really like the idea of that. If you don't know how to negotiate seller financing, I would encourage you to check out my other YouTube video on how I buy houses for free with no money down and no interest. I take that exact strategy and I apply it here. And I did it at a very high level. So let's talk about, real quick before we get to that, the difficulty of getting a list of mobile home parks. That's a good thing and that's a bad thing. Why is it a bad thing? Because it's difficult to get a list, right? Like it's hard to do it. It's a good thing because this is the barrier of entry that we need to be able to acquire these parks. So how do we do it? What we do is hire virtual assistants. We can pay them something as simple as $3 an hour, have them scour Google Maps from the aerial view of the zip codes that we're going after. Look how distinguishable these mobile home parks are, right? There's no mistaking that. You see all these lined up parallel, the shiny roofs, the long, slender mobile homes. Like it's very distinguishable. It's easy to tell. So basically I have them scour Google Maps looking for stuff like this. And then here's the crazy part, right? To get the phone number, all you do is you see the little gold guy down here on the bottom right. You drop him to the front of the park, and I cannot make this up. The sellers usually put either their phone number or the park manager, which you probably have to go through them anyway, usually. Either their phone number or the park manager's phone number right on the front of the park. So on all 3 parks that we bought, that was the case. It was the owner's phone number. It's absolutely crazy, absolutely mind-blowing. Called this number, ended up being able to get the thing under contract. So that was phenomenal. That was awesome. I'll leave you with this. I'm a big-time believer in mobile home parks. It's been life-changing for me. And the downside is that they're hard to find. The upside is that, for one, it's a phenomenal asset class. But 2, you got to know that people are having a hard time finding these things. And I just showed you how to find them. So I'm telling you, you take this thing, you put it into practice, and great things are going to happen. So go get them, everybody. If you want to hear more, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Homebuyer Tyler. Follow me on Instagram, same handle, Homebuyer Tyler. Everyone, have a great day. Go get them.